So let me show you how do we create a tag in AngularJS. So the thing that I'm going to do is again create an HTML file. Of course, I'm going to name it as 05 just to keep the sequence and name it as tag because I'm just going to be creating a tag here. So of course, I'm going to need here again the script, and I'm just going to copy some code to save some time. So put it here at the end of the body and then just close the script tag. Now, I have created a module here already by the name my app. So to the module, I'm going to add app.directive, which is another function defined with Angular. The good part is that whether you create a controller or you create a filter or whatever you create as a functionality, there is a method available which you can directly call, and the syntax is also similar. So the first parameter again takes the name of the directive. In this particular case, I'm just going to name this as tk-link, and the second is of course going to be a function which defines the functionality of this directive. Now a directive function really expects me to return an object in which I really configure the way my directive looks and behaves. And so I'm going to be using a template here as a property value to tell this particular directive what is this directive going to look like, or what is this tag going to look like. And in this particular case, I'm just going to define an href, which is going to point to my own website, which is tkhts.com, and this refers to tkhts link, and with tag closes here. So this is the template which is going to be rendered when somebody really uses this as a tag. So if I use this as a tag in my body somewhere and call it now, since this is a tag and it has a definition here, it should just work fine. So let me just test this, and I open this up. Some issue and says app direction is not a function, it's just directive. There's this typo thing, directive. And so you have a tk link, and then this really refers to the stack here. Okay, the point that I missed out is of course using an ng app, which is now my app. And so Angular is pretty bad with these things when there is no error and you have to figure out what has gone wrong. So it is still something which is growing up with troubleshooting. And so you have a tkhts link, which is now a reusable tag, and you can really copy this tag down anywhere in your body. So it does not really have to be here, it could be here, and you can just create as many tags as you want. So it just prints as many tags as you want. And so this becomes a reusable tag in itself. You can use the shortcut tk-link, and that should work fine too. So instead of the whole amount of code that you had to write, you can just reuse this simple directive. Of course, that can have a behavior and can do certain things. I mean, I'll have to configure the directive to behave in a certain way, but for simplicity's sake, this looks fine. Now, what is to be noticed here is that the directive name is actually different from what is written in HTML. And this is because for directives or tags, there is a special form of normalization process that happens. So this capital letter, whenever it encounters in a camel case, it gets converted into a hyphen and a small letter. So you'll notice this capital L converted to hyphen and a small l. And that is done basically to keep a prefix with directives. And number one, it really helps you identify your own directives separately, so you don't really mix with the ng ones which are Angular defined. So you can have your own prefix, and this could be based on the name of your project, maybe, and an organization name. But keep in mind that this does not have to be really complex, because if you use too many hyphens like this, it just gets a little complex to use. So from HTML point of view, this should be usage wise very easy, and so I think one prefix will be really sufficient, and that really defines your reusable tag. And like I said, you can go ahead and reuse this. But let's just go down to the HTML structure and see how does this tag really look like. I'm just going to trim off these multiple tags, just keep it one, and see where this really falls. So if I refresh and go down to the HTML structure, you'll see this TK link is right here available as a tag. Now to HTML itself, TK link is literally no instruction. It's just kind of ignored. It is only Angular which gives it a representation and replaces it with a template. So if you don't really want TK link, since it is already redundant, you can use something called as a replace and mark this true as a property. And so once you refresh this and you go down to the body edge, you'll see no TK link. Is just kind of replaces it completely with the ahref tag. So TK link is not a tag anymore. It's just the ahref. And if you point it to false, of course, which is default, it just behaves the same way. So you'll have a TK link and then points to something. What is also interesting is you cannot only use this as an element, but you can also use this particular directive as a attribute to some element. So it could be a TK link, and since it points to, I mean, does not really have any attributes as such, but I mean, this div also will behave the same way as the element. So the difference really is that when you use, when you're creating directives as a completely new functionality, which is not available. So consider creating a user info tag, which is a completely new functionality. Then it is good practice to keep it as an element. And if you're using something as an attribute, it could be an enhancement to an existing element. So if you wanted to create your input text box as something which is unique for a user, consider username text box. So then you can have a text box with a unique username property, which acts as an addition to what is already available. So in this particular case, it will be, so this really works for only element right now. So let's just add a restriction here, which tells me, so restrict it to, I'm just going to replace this with restrict, which tells me whether it is an element or an attribute. And in this case, it happens to be element TK link. And if I replace this with an A here, it still displays me, but now it is actually the div which displays the value of this particular tag. So you can create some combinations as well. So if I want to use both of them, I'll use an AE combination, which means the tag can be an element, which is E, or can be an attribute to a existing element. And in this case, you'll see somehow doesn't really work. So let's just get back and figure out what's gone wrong. Um, again start from here. So you can not only have element as a directive declared as an element, but you can also have it as declared as an attribute to an existing element. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write another div here and have tk link as one of the attributes to existing div elements. So since I'm not using any attributes, I can just keep it simple like this. And if I refresh, you'll see, the two links, one which belongs to the div itself, and this is an element. So the default value for um, having an element or an attribute is both. So you can have your element declared as an element or an attribute, but if you want to really control this, then you can restrict your element to be of type element in this particular case. And so you'll notice that this div is kind of ignored and it is only one link that gets displayed. If you want a combination of both of them, you can keep it to attribute and element, and it displays as attribute and element. The difference between these two is that when you have a new functionality, completely new, which does not exist in HTML already or any Angular tags that you've created, you would like to create it as a element tag in itself. So take a case of user info, which is not available to as a functionality, so you create it as an element. While when you are enhancing a functionality in already existing one, you're more likely to use something like an attribute. So if you have a text box which you want to create as a unique username, then you can have a text box and a property probably called as a unique username as an attribute, which just enhances to the functionality. Another example could be use a something to style up the element. That is not usually done with directives, but I mean just in case if you need it. So that's a little about directives. You can also, if you want it on a group of elements, create it as a class. So consider this class is defined as tk link, and I'm just simulating this for a group of objects that you want to apply this on. So you can create this as of type class, and I'm just going to comment this. So if you refresh, you'll have 4 links. So basically you can apply a directive on a group of elements, and that can be done by using a class thing. And there is something else which is called as an M for comments, but that's not we are going to discuss, as it is not really used in simpler scenarios. So basically it's just about creating your own tags, and you can see that it is just the app.directive which gives a definition to the directive, and you can use it in your HTML by using it as an element or an attribute or as a class when you want to use it for a group of elements. So that's a little view into how do you create your own custom tags. Thank you so much, and I'll be waiting for you on the TKHTS channel for more videos coming up. So stay tuned and good luck.